Attack on Titan is done. First of all, lots of love, lots of respect for Isayama. Japan's the home of kaiju and mecha, and I think it's been the biggest series of those genres in the last decade, and it's one of the biggest of those genres of all time. But as this wonderful show comes to an end, what I'm realizing is people do not understand Attack on Titan. But before I continue, I just want to say there will be spoilers to the end of Attack on Titan. This is your warning. So when a show this big is coming to an end, it's of course going to be trending on Twitter, and that's where I saw the worst media analysis I ever seen. Now, some were just coming from a place probably of just being a little bit too cynical, too edgy, whatever, but pure. And others were coming from a place of absolute insanity, okay? So I'm going to talk about three things. Number one, is Attack on Titan fascist propaganda like some have said? Number two, what does the ending mean? And number three, was the ending good or bad? So question number one, is Attack on Titan fascist, racist, anti-Semitic propaganda? No. Absolutely not. It's pretty clear that the Eldians, especially the ones in Marley, were inspired by the treatment of Jews during the Holocaust. From being forced to live in ghettos to wearing clothes to identify themselves. But that's where the similarities end, because as far as I know, Jewish people in real life don't turn into Titans. And culturally, because culture does exist in Attack on Titans among the different countries, the island where the Eldians live seems a lot more German to me than culturally Jewish. But the more important question is the messaging rather than the cultures or tragedies that inspired certain aspects of the show. And I gotta say, this show is one of the most anti-war and anti-racist shows I've ever seen. Like, have you seen Gabby's entire arc? Like, she is an example of a young person with racist propaganda so deeply ingrained in her that she really genuinely believed it, and we saw during her arc the slow and gradual process of being not racist. It was super realistic and well done. I don't understand how anyone can claim that this show is pro-racism or pro-fascism. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that ending, though, is apparently very controversial, but I think that's because people just don't get it. So I'm gonna try to explain it in this second section. The ending had a lot of things going on. It was very complex. There's a lot of themes. I can't get to everything, but I still will get into spoilers heavy in this section. So some tweets about the ending caught my attention, some for worse reasons than others. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to go into chronological order about what they're talking about in terms of what was happening in the episode, alright? So this dude had a bunch of bad takes, but he was mainly complaining that Mikasa was forced to be the main character, had nothing to do with Ymir, yet had played such an important role, and Eren was done poorly. So I can't address every single one of his complaints, and I'm going to sound vague to somebody who hasn't watched the show, but I'm assuming if you made it this far, you already seen it. Ymir, the founding Titan, was in love with King Fritz, her abuser, right? But to be clear, her love isn't seen as a positive thing. It's seen as a negative thing. It's seen as agonizing. It is the curse that is plaguing humanity that's keeping the Titans a thing. And one of the things about Attack on Titan is that things are planned so ahead, from the beginning to the end. Okay, and this is clearly one of them. So when the guy complains that, oh, why did they change this aspect of the story to make Mikasa the main character? No, they didn't. It's pretty clear that there's a connection between Ymir and Mikasa if you just look a little deeper. Just like Ymir, Mikasa is super devoted to a guy, Eren, to the point that after the rumbling started and everything's going down, she still really didn't want to kill him. But at the end of the day, she had to be the one to do it. She had to do, in her eyes, the ultimate sacrifice. She likely would have been more willing to die than kill Eren, so this was the biggest sacrifice to her, and she did it, and she did it in front of Ymir. So what Ymir was able to see is someone sacrificing their love for the greater good, for humanity, and that's a beautiful thing. I think Ymir is almost like a ghost in a way, not exactly, but almost like a ghost. And it was such a powerful moment for her to see essentially somebody in her shoes with her level of devotion fight for something that they cared so strongly about, humanity, saving the world essentially, that they were willing to sacrifice the love of their life to do it. And that was the moment Ymir changed her mind. That was the only thing that could convince her. That was what Eren knew would happen without knowing what exactly Mikasa would do. But like he said to Armin, he said Mikasa's gonna do something, and Mikasa did that. Anyway, moving on from that, another thing I want to address is people kind of wondering what does the end credits mean. Essentially what we saw in the end credits was after the entire story, civilization built up, skyscrapers, cities, but then ended up with nuclear war. But then later on we see another guy walking down, and he goes to the tree, and he's about to enter the tree just like Ymir did, and he's walking in with his dog. But when people are asking what exactly does this mean, how did they interpret it, people are kind of giving some mad negative interpretations, and they're not being bad or anything. Don't hate on them. Considering the fact that some of the main themes of this special was life and the value of life, even with suffering, why life is just worth it, I think it's ending on a lot more of an optimistic message. Ultimately, the person approaching the tree is not in the same position as Eren. They're not in the same position as Ymir. They're not a slave. They're not in the middle of a conflict. They are simply just wandering. They are truly free. So maybe they get the powers of the Titans. Maybe. But who's to say they're gonna use it for bad means? Who's to say they're gonna use it for war? They're not enslaved to a king that's gonna force them to fight for him, you know? So I think that we're potentially seeing an end to the cycle, because that was one of the things a lot of the characters were hoping for. This cycle of violence and torment would end. And maybe we're gonna see the power of Ymir, the power of the Titans, used to actually help humanity. Of course, we don't know that. That's up to interpretation, but that's definitely a possibility, and that's my much more optimistic reading of the ending. And with the end in mind, was the end of Attack on Titan good or bad? Well, that's subjective. That's up to interpretation. But honestly, if you think it's bad, I think you're out of your mind. You need to put down the crack pipe. Okay, because I heard so much manga readers complain about this ending that I was kind of worried. Is this going to be like how Evangelion, the TV version, ended? You know, that level of controversy. But absolutely not. This was a super solid ending. What is wrong with you people, bro? I think it was amazing, frankly. I think it was beautiful. And also, let me finish the video off with this. For the last 10 years, Mikasa's been the GOAT. Okay, Mikasa's just built different. She's a legend in the game. She is best girl. And I'm kind of sad that it's over, man. Anyway, I'm glad the show was made. I really am. It was a beautiful show to watch. It was a beautiful experience. It was actually the first anime I ever watched. So, it's the end of an era, man. It really is.